David Reed wiped grease from his hands as sparks flew from the damaged control panel. The massive gate scanner hummed with dangerous energy above him, its crystal core pulsing with colors that hurt to look at directly. For 3 days, the main transport gate had been acting strange, sending ships to wrong destinations and giving impossible readings on biological scans. Another malfunction in Sector 7, his partner Ben called from across the maintenance bay. "This thing is falling apart faster than we can fix it." David crawled under the scanner array, following the bundle of fiber optic cables that fed data to the main computer. The gate scanner was humanity's ticket to the stars, a gift from the Galactic Coalition when Earth joined 50 years ago. Without it, humans would still be trapped in their solar system, dreaming of distant worlds. The technology was far beyond anything humans could build. Each scanner could read every cell in a person's body, map their genetic code, and transport them instantly across thousands of light years. The Coalition claimed it was perfectly safe, but David had always wondered what would happen if something went wrong. His wrench slipped, striking a hidden panel that popped open with a soft hiss. Inside, David found cables that weren't on any schematic he'd seen. They glowed with a faint blue light and felt warm to the touch. As he reached to examine them closer, his fingers brushed against something small and hard wedged behind the wiring. The object was no bigger than a coin, smooth and dark, like polished stone. The moment David touched it, the thing seemed to pulse with life. Heat spread up his arm and strange images flashed through his mind. Vast cities floating in space, beings of pure light, and something terrible lurking in the darkness between stars. David had found the object as a child, buried in his grandmother's garden after a meteor shower. He'd carried it in his pocket for 20 years, never knowing what it was. Sometimes it felt warm, sometimes cold, but it had never reacted like this before. "David, get out of there," Ben shouted. "The scanner is powering up on its own." The gate scanner's crystal core blazed with brilliant light. Energy arced between the metal rings that surrounded it, and the air itself seemed to vibrate. David tried to move, but his muscles wouldn't obey. The small object in his hand grew burning hot, and the scanner's beam swept down toward him. When the light hit him, David screamed. Every cell in his body felt like it was being torn apart and rebuilt. The scanner wasn't just reading his biological signature. It was trying to process something it had never encountered before. Warning alarms shrieked as computer screens exploded in showers of sparks. Dr. Sarah Walsh rushed into the maintenance bay as emergency power kicked in. She found David lying unconscious beneath the scanner, which was now dark and smoking. Ben was calling for medical teams while frantically checking David's vital signs. "His pulse is steady," Ben said as Sarah knelt beside David. "But look at this readout." Sarah stared at the scanner's display screen. Where David's biological signature should have shown normal human patterns, the screen displayed something impossible. The energy readings were off the charts, showing cellular modifications that shouldn't exist. Most disturbing was the classification code that kept blinking at the bottom of the screen. Apex class detected. "That's not possible," Sarah whispered. "Apex class readings are theoretical. They're supposed to represent the first gods who built the gate network." David's eyes opened, and for a moment they glowed with the same blue light as the object in his hand. Then the glow faded, and he looked around in confusion. "What happened?" he asked, sitting up slowly. "I feel different." Sarah helped him to his feet, but she couldn't stop staring at the scanner readings. In all her years studying gate technology, she'd never seen anything like this. The Coalition had strict protocols for unusual biological signatures, and David's readings would trigger alarms across the galaxy. "We need to get you to the medical bay," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "The scanner malfunctioned during your repair work. You might have been exposed to dangerous radiation." David nodded, but as they walked toward the exit, he noticed things he'd never seen before. He could sense the electromagnetic fields from every piece of equipment in the room. The walls seemed transparent, showing him the building structure and the people moving through distant corridors. Most strange of all, he could feel something vast and ancient stirring in the depths of space, as if his contact with the scanner had awakened something that had been sleeping for millions of years. As they reached the medical bay, Sarah's communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Coalition Command. The scanner's malfunction had sent an automatic alert to every gate facility in the sector. Within hours, representatives from a dozen alien races, would be demanding answers about the impossible, readings that had emerged from Earth's primary gate. David sat on the examination table as Sarah ran her medical scanner over him. The device gave the same impossible readings. His cellular structure had been fundamentally altered in ways that defied explanation. According to the scanner, David Reed was no longer entirely human. "Dr. Walsh," David said quietly, "I need to tell you something. I've been carrying this object since I was a child." He pulled the dark stone from his pocket. It now pulsed with steady blue light, warm to the touch. Sarah's face went pale as she recognized the markings etched into the stone's surface. She'd seen similar symbols in classified coalition files, artifacts supposedly left behind by the apex gods who had vanished eons ago. "David," she said, "I think you've just become the most dangerous person in the galaxy. And you don't even know why yet." Outside the medical bay, coalition security teams were already mobilizing. The first alien ships would arrive within days, and they wouldn't be coming to offer help. David Reed had been marked by technology that shouldn't exist, carrying power that belonged to beings who had shaped the cosmos itself. The hunt was about to begin. 3 black ships dropped out of hyperspace above Earth's moon, their hulls bearing the crimson markings of the Hegemony Intelligence Division. Admiral Torres watched them approach through the observation deck of Luna Station, her jaw tight with worry. In 48 hours since David Reed's accident, the gate scanner incident had become the most classified event in Coalition history. "The readings don't lie," Dr. Walsh said, standing beside the Admiral with a data pad full of impossible numbers. "David's cellular structure has been completely rewritten. The artifact he carried seems to have acted as some kind of key, unlocking dormant genetic code that shouldn't exist in humans." Admiral Torres had seen the classified reports. Every major alien faction in the Coalition was sending ships to Earth, each with their own theory about what David Reed had become. The Hegemony believed he was a weapon that could tip the balance of power across the galaxy. The collective thought he might be the key to unlocking ancient technology that could advance their civilization by thousands of years. Most dangerous of all were the purists, religious fanatics who worshipped the vanished apex gods. To them, David was either a sacred messenger or a blasphemous abomination that needed to be destroyed. Down on Earth, David sat in a secure facility beneath the Colorado mountains, trying to understand what was happening to him. The changes were accelerating. He could hear radio signals from orbit, see through solid walls, and somehow sense the emotional state of every person in the building. When he touched electronic devices, they responded to his thoughts instead of manual controls. "The artifact you carried," Dr. Walsh explained during one of their sessions, "we believe it's a fragment of something called the Prime Codex. According to ancient Coalition records, the apex gods left behind technological artifacts before they vanished. Most were destroyed or lost, but a few fragments survived." David turned the dark stone over in his hands. It was now permanently warm and pulsed with soft light that seemed to match his heartbeat. "Why didn't it affect me before? I've had this thing for 20 years. "The gate scanner," Dr. Walsh said. "It uses technology derived from apex god artifacts. When you were exposed to the scanner beam while holding the fragment, it created some kind of resonance cascade. The scanner tried to read your biology but instead activated dormant code in your DNA." Before David could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Dr. Walsh's communicator crackled with urgent reports from the surface. Hegemony strike teams had somehow located the hidden base and were moving to capture David. "How did they find us?" David asked as security teams rushed through the corridors outside. Dr. Walsh grabbed his arm. "The same way we'll always find you now. That energy signature you're broadcasting can be detected by any advanced scanner in the Coalition fleet. We need to get you out of here." They ran through maintenance tunnels as explosions echoed from above. The Hegemony forces were cutting through the facility's defenses with weapons that turned solid metal into vapor. David could sense their thoughts, cold, focused minds driven by the promise of capturing a prize beyond imagination. As they reached the emergency transport bay, David felt something new awakening in his mind. The knowledge wasn't his own. It came from the artifact, from genetic memories left behind by beings who had shaped the stars themselves. He understood now why the apex gods had hidden fragments of the Prime Codex. "Dr. Walsh," he said as they climbed into an escape pod, "the apex gods didn't just disappear. They sacrifice themselves to protect the galaxy from something. The gate network isn't just for transportation, it's part of a prison system. The escape pod launched just as hegemony forces breached the transport bay. David pressed his hand against the control panel and felt the ship respond to his will rather than its programmed course. Instead of heading to the nearest coalition base, the pod jumped through space itself, bypassing the gate network entirely. They materialized in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, hidden among the floating rocks and ice. Dr. Walsh stared at the impossible readings on their instruments. "David, what you just did? That's not possible with this ship's technology." "I know," David said, looking at his hands as energy flickered between his fingers. "I'm changing into something else. I can feel it happening every hour. The question is whether I'll still be human when it's finished." Their communicator picked up transmissions from Earth orbit. The hegemony ships had been joined by vessels from 3 other major factions. Each group was claiming the right to capture or study David, while coalition forces struggled to maintain order. Within hours, the search would expand to every system in the local sector. "We can't run forever," Dr. Walsh said. "You need training, and we need to understand what the Prime Codex is really meant to do." David closed his eyes and let his new senses expand across space. He could feel the gate network like a vast web connecting thousands of worlds, but underneath it was something else, a deeper pattern that pulsed with dangerous energy. Whatever the apex gods had been trying to contain was still out there, and it was starting to wake up. "There's someone we need to find," David said. "Alex Chen, a former coalition archaeologist. He's been studying apex god ruins in secret. If anyone can help us understand what's happening, it's him." Their escape pod turned toward the outer system, where smugglers and rebels operated beyond coalition control. David Reed was no longer just a maintenance engineer who had touched the wrong artifact. He was becoming something that could reshape the galaxy, or destroy it. Behind them, the hunt spread across space as every major power in the coalition mobilized their fleets. Some wanted to capture David, others wanted to study him, and a few wanted to kill him before he could complete his transformation. None of them understood that they were already too late. The changes in David Reed were part of a plan set in motion millions of years ago, and the galaxy was about to face a threat that had been sleeping since the dawn of civilization. The smuggler's ship drifted through the dense asteroid field surrounding Kepler 438b, its hull scarred from years of avoiding coalition patrols. Alex Chen stood in the cargo bay, examining a collection of artifacts that would have made coalition archaeologists weep with envy. Each piece hummed with the same strange energy that David Reed now carried in his cells. "Another Prime Codex fragment," Alex muttered, holding up a crystalline shard that pulsed with internal light. "That makes 17 I've found in the past 5 years." The apex gods scattered these things across the galaxy for a reason. His ship's sensors detected an incoming vessel, a small escape pod broadcasting coalition emergency codes. Alex hesitated before activating his tractor beam. Helping coalition personnel was dangerous for someone who'd been branded a criminal for refusing to surrender his research to military. Controlled the pod's airlock, open to reveal Dr. Sarah Walsh and a man whose eyes glowed with the same blue light as Alex's artifacts. Alex's breath caught as he recognized the energy signature radiating from the stranger. "You're David Reed," Alex said, "the man who survived contact with an active Prime Codex fragment." David nodded, still getting used to the constant flow of new sensations. On the 3-day journey from Earth, his abilities had continued growing. He could now interface directly with any electronic system, see across vast distances of space, and sense the emotions of every living being within miles. "Dr. Walsh says you've been studying Apex God technology," David said. "We need to understand what's happening to me before the Coalition finds us." Alex led them deeper into his ship, past storage bays filled with ancient artifacts and research equipment. The vessel itself was a marvel, part Coalition science ship, part smuggler's freighter, modified with technology that shouldn't exist according to official records. 5 years ago, I was the Coalition's lead xenoarchaeologist, Alex explained as they walked. I discovered ruins on Epsilon Eridani that contained fragments of the Prime Codex. When I tried to study them, Coalition Command ordered me to turn over everything to their weapons division. They entered Alex's laboratory, where dozens of prime codex fragments were arranged in careful patterns. Each one pulsed with soft light, and David could feel them responding to his presence like instruments tuning to the same frequency. The official story is that the apex gods were an ancient race that built the gate network, and then vanished mysteriously, Alex continued. But that's not the truth. I've spent years translating their records, and the real story is much darker. Dr. Walsh activated her recorder as Alex pulled up holographic displays, showing star charts that predated human civilization by millions of years. The images showed vast structures surrounding entire solar systems, technology that could reshape matter at the atomic level, and fleets of ships larger than Earth's moon. The apex gods weren't just advanced, Alex said. They had transcended physical limitations entirely. They could manipulate space and time, create matter from pure energy, and travel between dimensions. They were essentially living gods who ruled over most of the galaxy. David moved closer to the prime codex fragments, and they began resonating more strongly. What happened to them? They encountered something that even they couldn't fight, Alex said grimly. An entity from outside our reality that feeds on entire dimensions. The apex gods called it the Void Caller. The laboratory's lights dimmed as Alex brought up the final set of records. The holographic display showed images that hurt to look at directly. Regions of space where reality itself had been torn away, leaving nothing but hungry emptiness. The apex gods realized they couldn't destroy the Void Caller, Alex continued, so they did the only thing they could. They sacrificed themselves to create a prison that would contain it. The gate network isn't just for transportation. It's part of a massive containment system that keeps the Void Caller locked away in a pocket dimension. Dr. Walsh stared at the data in horror. The Coalition has been using this technology for 50 years. Do they know what it really is? The current Coalition leadership doesn't, Alex said. But some of the older alien races remember fragments of the truth. That's why so many factions are trying to capture David. They think controlling him means controlling technology that could remake the galaxy. David touched one of the larger prime codex fragments, and suddenly the laboratory filled with visions. He could see the final battle between the apex gods and the Void Caller, beings of pure light throwing themselves into a cosmic furnace to forge chains that could bind chaos itself. The transformation happening to me, David said, his voice strained. It's not random. The prime codex fragments are rewriting my DNA to match the genetic pattern of the apex gods. I'm becoming what they were. But why you? Dr. Walsh asked. Why did the artifact choose you? Alex pulled up genetic scans from David's medical files. Because his DNA already contained dormant modifications. Somehow David's bloodline carries genetic markers that match apex god patterns. The artifact didn't choose him randomly. It was waiting for someone with the right genetic key. Before David could process this revelation, his enhanced senses detected ships approaching the asteroid field. Coalition vessels were closing in, their scanners probing for the energy signature that David couldn't hide. Admiral Torres, Alex said, recognizing the ship configurations. She's not like the others. Torres actually cares about protecting people, not just grabbing power. The communications array crackled to life with an incoming transmission. Admiral Torres's voice was tired but determined. This is Admiral Torres to the vessel harboring David Reed. We need to talk. The situation has escalated beyond anything we expected. David reached out with his enhanced awareness and sensed the Admiral's emotions, fear, determination, and something else. Torres knew more about the current crisis than she'd revealed to her own officers. There's something else happening, Torres continued over the comm. Gate stations across 3 sectors have started malfunctioning. We're detecting energy signatures that match theoretical Void Caller readings. Whatever was done to David Reed, it's affected the entire containment network. Alex's face went pale as he checked his instruments. The prime codex fragments in his laboratory were all pulsing in unison now, responding to some distant signal. David, your transformation isn't just changing you. It's sending ripples through the entire network. The Void Caller can sense what's happening. David looked at his hands as energy crackled between his fingers. The power was intoxicating, but underneath it was something darker, a growing awareness of the thing that waited in the spaces between realities, testing the strength of its prison. We can't run anymore, David said. If the containment system is failing, then I need to understand what I'm becoming. Admiral Torres might be our only chance to access Coalition databases before it's too late. The decision would determine not just David's fate, but the survival of every living being in the galaxy. The Void Caller was stirring, and the prison that had held it for millions of years was beginning to crack. Captain Maria Santos watched the Coalition fleet movements from her command center, deep inside the hollowed-out asteroid that served as headquarters for the Free Worlds movement. The rebellion had started as a protest against Coalition taxation of frontier colonies, but now they were fighting for something much bigger. The right of worlds to govern, themselves without interference from distant bureaucrats. Another 3 systems have declared independence this week, her intelligence officer reported. The Coalition is losing control of the Outer Rim, Maria nodded grimly. The Coalition's authoritarian expansion had pushed too many worlds too far. What had started as a peaceful alliance for mutual protection had become an empire that crushed any planet daring to question its authority. Her communication officer looked up from his console. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Torres. She's requesting a meeting under neutral ground protocols. Maria raised an eyebrow. Torres was one of the few Coalition officers she still respected, but they'd been on opposite sides for 3 years. What does she want? The transmission revealed more than Maria expected. Admiral Torres, Dr. Walsh, Alex Chen, and a man whose energy readings were off any scale she'd ever seen. Torres explained the situation with David Reed, the Prime Codex fragments, and the growing instability in the Gate network. The hegemony has been manipulating Coalition policy for years, Torres said during their encrypted conference. They want David Reed captured so they can weaponize his abilities. What they don't understand is that using his power could shatter the containment system, holding back the Void Caller. Maria studied David through the video feed. The man looked ordinary enough, but her instruments detected energy signatures that made no sense. Why bring this to us? The Free Worlds movement can't take on the entire Coalition fleet. Because you're the only ones fighting for the right cause, Alex Chen interjected. The Coalition has become too corrupted to handle this crisis properly. We need people who still remember what they're supposed to be protecting. David spoke for the first time during the conference. Captain Santos, I can sense the emotions of everyone in this conversation. You're afraid, but not of me. You're afraid of what the Coalition might become if they get their hands on this technology. Maria felt a chill as David's glowing eyes seemed to look directly at her through the transmission. What are you proposing? An alliance, Torres said. Temporary cessation of hostilities while we deal with a threat that could destroy every living world in the galaxy. The Free Worlds movement has access to Apex God ruins that the Coalition can't reach. We need those sites to find more Prime Codex fragments. 3 days later, Maria's personal ship rendezvoused with Torres' small fleet at the edge of the Vega system. The meeting took place aboard a neutral freighter, with representatives from both sides trying to work out the impossible, cooperation between enemies. David had changed even more during the journey. His transformation was accelerating, giving him abilities that seemed to violate the laws of physics. He could teleport short distances, manipulate gravity fields, and interface directly with any technology he touched. The Prime Codex fragments are calling to each other, David explained, as they reviewed star charts showing known Apex God sites. I can sense 17 fragments scattered across Coalition space, but there are more beyond the frontier. The Free Worlds colonies have found ruins that predate anything in Coalition records. Maria's archaeologist, Dr. Lee Foster, brought up images from excavations on Tau Ceti Prime. We've found structures that seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Coalition teams couldn't even enter them without their equipment failing. But David can, Alex realized. His transformation is making him compatible with Apex God technology that normal humans can't even perceive. They planned carefully. The joint expeditions would visit 6 major Apex God sites, gathering Prime Codex fragments while staying ahead of hegemony forces that were spreading across the galaxy in search of David. Each fragment would enhance David's abilities but also increase the risk of destabilizing the containment network. The first site was on Kepler 186F, a world that the Free Worlds movement had been studying for 2 years. The ruins were vast, a city-sized complex that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Coalition teams had given up after losing 3 survey parties to spatial anomalies. David walked through the ruins like he belonged there, his enhanced senses guiding him to chambers that were invisible to normal perception. The prime codex fragment they found was larger than any Alex had discovered, a crystalline matrix the size of a person's head that contained what appeared to be vast databases of information. When David touched the fragment, his mind was flooded with memories that weren't his own. He saw the final days of the apex god civilization, their desperate preparations as reality itself began to break down around them. The Void Caller hadn't just threatened their empire, it had started consuming the fundamental laws of physics that held the universe together. They knew this would happen, eventually, David said as they returned to their ships. The prison they built was never meant to be permanent. It was designed to buy time for their successors to find a better solution. Successors? Maria asked. Us, David said simply. Every species in the galaxy carries dormant genetic modifications left behind by the apex gods. Humans, your people, everyone in the coalition, we're all part of their contingency plan. Their second target was a mining colony in the Centauri system, where Free World's prospectors had found structures buried under 3 miles of rock. The fragment there contained tactical information about the Void Caller's weaknesses, but accessing it nearly killed David. His transformation was reaching a critical phase where his human consciousness risked being overwhelmed by Apex God memories. Dr. Walsh worked frantically to stabilize David's neural patterns while Admiral Torres coordinated their escape from hegemony forces that had tracked them to the system. The coalition was fracturing as different factions chose sides in the growing conflict. We're running out of time, Torres reported as they jumped to their next destination. Intelligence reports indicate that the hegemony has made contact with something calling itself the Harbinger. They're being promised technology that could let them rule the galaxy. Alex felt ice in his veins. The Harbinger isn't offering them technology. It's the Void Caller's advanced scout, preparing the way for its master's return. By the time they reached the fourth site, David's transformation was nearly complete. He could manipulate matter at the molecular level, travel through space without a ship, and perceive dimensions that existed beyond normal reality. But with each new ability came the growing awareness of something vast and hungry pressing against the barriers that contained it. The prison is failing, David said as they gathered in Maria's command center. I can feel it cracking in 17 different places. The Void Caller is testing its strength and it's getting stronger. Maria looked at the tactical displays showing coalition fleets mobilizing across the galaxy. Some were loyal to Torres, others followed hegemony orders, and a few had gone rogue entirely. The galaxy was on the brink of civil war just when it needed unity most. How long do we have? She asked. David's eyes blazed with power that was no longer entirely human. Days, maybe hours. The final confrontation is coming whether we're ready or not. The Free World's movement and their unlikely coalition allies were about to face an enemy that had destroyed civilizations before humanity had even learned to make fire. Their only weapon was a maintenance engineer who was becoming something beyond mortal understanding, carrying the hopes of every living world in his transformed hands. The Coalition research station orbiting Proxima Centauri burst into flames as David Reed's transformation reached its final phase. General Kane of the Hegemony Intelligence Division watched from his command ship as containment fields designed to hold antimatter failed against power that rewrote the laws of physics around it. Sir, the subject's energy output is increasing exponentially, his science officer reported, fear evident in her voice. The station's reactor is going critical. Kane had spent 6 months tracking David Reed across the galaxy, finally cornering him during a raid on another Apex God site. The plan had been simple: capture the transformed human, study his abilities, and unlock the secrets of godlike power. Instead, they had triggered something that threatened to tear apart local spacetime. In the station's detention center, David hung suspended in energy fields that were failing by the second. His body was no longer entirely human: skin that glowed with internal light, eyes that held the depth of cosmic space, and cellular structure that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Prime Codex fragments he had integrated over the past weeks were completing their work, transforming him into something the Apex gods had designed as their ultimate contingency plan. Let me go, David said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the station's hull vibrate. You don't understand what you're triggering. General Kane activated the communication system from the safety of his ship. Dr. Reed, your cooperation could benefit both our species. The hegemony offers partnership, not imprisonment. David's laughter held no humor. Through his enhanced awareness, he could sense Kane's true intentions, to dissect his abilities and create weapons that could subjugate every world in the galaxy. But worse than Kane's greed was what David sensed lurking behind the general's thoughts. Something else was influencing the hegemony, feeding them promises of power while guiding them toward actions that would weaken the cosmic prison. "The Harbinger has been whispering in your minds," David said. "Every decision your leaders have made for the past year has been designed to bring you to this moment." The station's hull began buckling as David's transformation reached critical mass. Energy patterns that belonged to creatures who had shaped galaxies were awakening in human flesh, and reality itself was struggling to contain the contradiction. "Sir, we need to evacuate," Kane's tactical officer urged. "The quantum field distortions are spreading beyond the station." Kane hesitated, unwilling to abandon the greatest prize in galactic history. That hesitation cost him everything. David's cellular structure suddenly shifted into a configuration that existed partially outside normal space-time, and the resulting energy release shattered every containment field on the station. David materialized on the bridge of Kane's command ship before the general could react. Where once had stood a human maintenance engineer, now stood something that burned with the light of creation itself. Kane's crew fell to their knees, overwhelmed by proximity to power that their minds couldn't fully process. "You've been used," David said, his voice now carrying the weight of cosmic authority. "The Harbinger doesn't serve the hegemony. It serves the thing that destroyed the apex gods." General Kane drew his sidearm, knowing it was useless but unable to accept the reversal of his fortunes. "You're just one man. The hegemony has fleets across 12 sectors." David gestured, and Kane's weapons simply ceased to exist. "Your fleets are exactly what the Void Caller needs. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier you've gathered, all of it will become fuel for its return to this dimension." As David spoke, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The communication array was picking up distress signals from across Coalition space. Gate stations were failing in cascade patterns, and entire star systems were reporting reality distortions that defied explanation. "It's beginning," David said, his awareness expanding across the galaxy. He could sense the cosmic prison cracking open like an egg, revealing something that existed in the spaces between atoms, in the darkness between stars. The Void Caller is testing its bonds. On Captain Santos's asteroid base, Admiral Torres received reports that made her blood run cold. 7 Coalition fleets had gone dark after investigating spatial anomalies. 3 star systems had simply disappeared from sensor readings, leaving empty space where billions of people had lived. "David was right," Dr. Walsh said as she analyzed the data. "The prison is collapsing. Every time he uses his abilities, it sends shockwaves through the containment network." Alex Chen looked up from his calculations. "It's worse than that. The hegemony's attempts to capture him have been deliberately triggering the prison's failure points. Someone has been feeding them information about how to break the seals." Torres activated the emergency communication array. "All Coalition forces, this is Admiral Torres. We are facing a galaxy-wide emergency. The entity known as the Void Caller is breaking free from ancient containment. All ships are ordered to fall back to defensive positions around inhabited systems." But it was too late for orderly retreats. Reality itself was becoming unstable, as something that existed beyond normal physics began forcing its way into their dimension. Planets aged millions of years in minutes, stars went nova for no apparent reason, and the very concept of cause and effect began breaking down in expanding zones of chaos. David felt every failure of the prison system like a physical blow. The transformation had given him awareness of cosmic-scale events, but also responsibility for them. He was becoming what the apex gods had been, a guardian of reality itself, charged with preventing chaos from consuming everything that existed. "I have to go to the source," David said, materializing aboard Maria Santos's command ship, without using any visible means of transport. His presence sent shivers through the ship's systems as technology struggled to process something that existed in multiple dimensions. "The source?" Maria asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "The prison dimension where the Void Caller has been contained for millions of years," David replied. "The seals are failing, and soon it will be strong enough to break free entirely. I'm the only thing in this galaxy that might be able to stop it." Dr. Walsh stepped forward. "David, you're still partially human. If you enter that dimension, there's no guarantee you'll be able to return. David looked at her with eyes that held the light of dying stars. Dr. Walsh, I stopped being entirely human days ago. What I am now, it's what the apex gods intended as their final weapon against chaos itself. Through the viewports, they could see space itself twisting into impossible shapes as the boundaries between dimensions weakened. The Void Caller was almost free, and when it emerged fully into their reality, every living world in the galaxy would face extinction. David Reed, former maintenance engineer and newest guardian of cosmic order, prepared for a battle that would determine whether the universe itself would survive the night. The Void Caller's prison dimension existed in the spaces between reality, where mathematics broke down and physics became suggestions rather than laws. David Reed stepped through the dimensional barrier into a realm of pure chaos, where fragments of destroyed civilizations floated in seas of liquid darkness that hungered for the warmth of living worlds. Behind him, the galaxy watched through sensors and prayers. Admiral Torres had united the remaining coalition fleets with Maria Santos's Free World's forces, creating a defensive line around Earth and the core systems. Alex Chen worked frantically to stabilize the gate network, while Dr. Walsh monitored David's bio-readings from across-dimensional barriers that shouldn't allow any signal to pass. I'm reading massive energy fluctuations. She reported to the combined command center. David's power levels are beyond anything we can measure. In the prison dimension, David faced something that had been waiting for this moment since the dawn of time. The Void Caller wasn't truly alive in any sense that living beings could understand. It was hunger given form, entropy made conscious, the inevitable ending of all things reaching forward through time to claim what it saw as rightfully its own. Finally, the Void Caller spoke without voice, its thoughts pressing against David's transformed mind like ice against flame. A mortal creature wearing the stolen power of gods. Do you understand what you have become, little guardian? David stood firm against the entity's presence, drawing on memories inherited from the apex gods. I understand that you've been imprisoned here for good reason. The apex gods gave their lives to keep you contained. The apex gods were fools, the Void Caller replied, its form shifting between states of matter that didn't exist in normal space. They thought they could delay the inevitable. But entropy cannot be stopped, only postponed. I am the ending that waits for every star, every world, every thought in your precious galaxy. Around them, the prison dimension shuddered as cracks spread through the cosmic barriers. David could sense reality bleeding through the gaps, entire star systems beginning to age and die as the Void Caller's influence seeped into normal space. Through his connection to the gate network, David felt the panic spreading across coalition worlds. On Earth, people looked up at stars that were flickering like dying candles. On the frontier colonies, time itself was moving backward in some regions and accelerating wildly in others. Your presence here has given me strength, the Void Caller continued. The power you carry belongs to my greatest enemies, but that power is now mine to command. Thank you for bringing it directly to me. David felt the entity's influence trying to take control of his transformed abilities. For a moment, the Void Caller's hunger threatened to overwhelm his human consciousness entirely. But something unexpected happened. The part of him that was still David Reed, still the maintenance engineer who had grown up on a farm in Kansas, refused to surrender. You're wrong about one thing, David said, drawing on every prime codex fragment he had integrated. I'm not just wearing the power of gods. I'm still human, and humans don't give up. The battle that followed existed on levels that normal physics couldn't describe. David and the Void Caller fought with forces that reshaped matter and energy, their conflict sending shockwaves through multiple dimensions. Reality itself became their battlefield as they struggled for control over the fundamental laws that held the universe together. In normal space, the effects were catastrophic. Entire solar systems experienced temporal storms that aged them millions of years in minutes. The gate network began collapsing as the supporting infrastructure couldn't handle the dimensional instabilities. David's bio readings just spiked beyond all measurement, Dr. Walsh reported. Whatever he's doing in there, it's burning through his life force. Admiral Torres coordinated evacuation fleets as inhabited worlds faced extinction. How long can he hold that thing? Not long enough, Alex Chen said grimly. The prison was designed to contain the Void Caller, not defeat it. Even with apex god power, David can't destroy something that fundamental to the universe's structure. But David had realized something the Apex gods hadn't considered. He couldn't destroy the Void Caller, but he could do something else. Drawing on his human understanding of sacrifice and duty, he began to merge his consciousness with the prison itself. "What are you doing?" the Void Caller demanded as David's power began stabilizing the dimensional barriers instead of attacking directly. "Something the Apex gods couldn't," David replied. They were immortal beings who saw themselves as separate from the universe they protected. "But I'm human. I understand that sometimes the only way to save something is to become part of it." David reached out with his transformed abilities and began rebuilding the prison from the inside, using his own life force as the foundation for barriers that could hold for eons, rather than mere millennia. The Void Caller fought desperately, but David's human determination proved stronger than cosmic hunger. As the new prison took shape around them, David felt his consciousness expanding beyond individual thought. He was becoming the guardian of reality itself, forever bound to maintain the barriers between order and chaos. "This isn't victory," the Void Caller snarled as the strengthened barriers closed around it. "You've only delayed the inevitable." "Maybe," David said, his voice now carrying the weight of cosmic responsibility. "But delay is all any of us ever have. The universe keeps going because people like me are willing to stand guard." The dimensional barrier sealed with a finality that would last for millions of years. In normal space, the temporal storms calmed and the gate network stabilized. But the price had been steep. David Reed was no longer entirely present in the dimension where humanity lived. On Admiral Torres's flagship, Dr. Walsh detected faint signals from beyond the dimensional barrier. David was still alive, still conscious but transformed into something that existed primarily as a guardian force watching over the cosmic prison. "David?" she called through the dimensional communicator Alex had improvised. "I'm here," came the reply, David's voice now carrying harmonics that spoke of vast distances and eternal vigil. "The Void Caller is contained, but someone needs to maintain the barriers. The Apex gods made themselves the foundation of the original prison. Now it's my turn." In the months that followed, the galaxy slowly rebuilt from the crisis. The coalition was restructured with humans and aliens working as true equals, rather than in the hierarchical system that had led to corruption. The gate network was redesigned as a tool for protection and cooperation rather than control. Captain Maria Santos became the first president of the Free Worlds Coalition, working with Admiral Torres to establish policies that respected planetary autonomy while maintaining mutual defense. Alex Chen founded a new research institute dedicated to studying Apex God technology for peaceful purposes. But the greatest change was in humanity's place in the galaxy. No longer seen as a junior species, humans were recognized as the inheritors of cosmic responsibility. They had produced a guardian willing to sacrifice everything to protect all life, and that sacrifice earned them respect across every inhabited world. Dr. Walsh established a monitoring station that maintained contact with David across dimensional barriers. Sometimes he would speak of what he saw from his position as cosmic guardian, threats that approached from beyond the galaxy, wonders that existed in distant dimensions, and the endless duty of watching over the barriers that kept chaos at bay. "Do you regret it?" she asked during one of their conversations. David's reply came across the vast distance between dimensions, carrying warmth that proved his humanity still lived within his transformed existence. "Dr. Walsh, I spent 20 years as a maintenance engineer keeping machines running, so people could live safely. Now I'm maintaining something bigger, but the job is the same. I'm making sure people can keep living, keep hoping, keep becoming more than they were before." The man who had once fixed gate scanners had become the guardian of reality itself. Proof that sometimes the most important heroes are the ones who simply refuse to let the universe break down on their watch. And in the depths of space, between the stars where possibility and chaos met, David Reed stood eternal guard, the human who had chosen duty over power and service over glory, keeping watch so that every living world could continue to reach for tomorrow.